Welcome to What We Think, brought to you by Marts&Lundy. Marts&Lundy is a strategic consulting firm committed to advancing the field of philanthropy. We help mission-driven organizations build the capacity they need to achieve their highest potential. In this podcast series, our experienced consultants and special guests will share insights on current opportunities, trends, and challenges in philanthropy.
Welcome, everyone, to this Marts&Lundy podcast. I'm Richard Ammons, Senior Consultant and Principal with Marts&Lundy, based in Durham, North Carolina. In today's podcast, we'll be discussing the roadmap that was created by the Florida International University Foundation for other institutions and university foundations when they established their Office of Inclusive Philanthropy in 2021. I want to welcome our guest today, Maia McGill, Senior Executive Director of Foundation Relations at Florida International University Foundation and Executive Director of FIU's Foundation's Office of Inclusive Philanthropy. Welcome, Maia.
Thank you so much, Richard. I appreciate being here.
Maia, to begin, can you tell us about your background and the path that led you to FIU?
Sure. So, born and raised in upstate New York, my very first job out of college was at the United Way of Greater Rochester. And then I had the fortunate opportunity to work with a very large medical center. And so really the focus on healthcare in our community, and began to really take a look at some of the barriers related to healthcare, particularly for underrepresented populations. And so I think that's really where my passion and my work for diversity, equity, inclusion really began to blossom. It had always been a priority for me, but to really be in the work and focused on it really helped to grow my thoughts regarding DEI, the purposefulness behind that work in that space. And so I was fortunate to work with faculty in our community and stakeholders and, writing white papers and, continue to grow in that space. And then my parents retired and moved to Florida. My sister and her husband were already here. And then my daughter got accepted to FIU. And so I said, there's absolutely no way that you are leaving me in the cold in Rochester. So I applied for a position at the College of Nursing at FIU, loaded everything on the train, and I heard from FIU on the train. And I felt like that was my sign that I was definitely supposed to be at FIU. And so I started in 2017, and it's been an amazing journey thus far.
The stars seemed all to have aligned.
Yes, they did.
That's great. Maia, what I've learned from you is that when you started the Office of Inclusive Philanthropy, you brought together fundraising professionals, alumni, community and industry partners from diverse backgrounds to evaluate, inform, and implement philanthropic strategies and programs that will advance systemic change. What was the strategic imperative that drove the creation of this office?
So, in response to the murder of George Floyd and many other victims of racialized violence, the university in 2020 commissioned the Equity Action Initiative to enhance equality, dignity, inclusion, and belonging at FIU. And we knew here in the foundation that philanthropy could really be a major driver in helping to move some of the things that we really wanted to accomplish, right? Because we often know that there are so many amazing things that the institution may want to do. And unfortunately, things tend to get stuck in the cycle. But
Mhm.
what we all know, those of us that work in advancement, is that money really does help to move things along. And so, FIU has done a great job in the work that we're doing, right? We are a Hispanic serving institution. We're a minority serving institution. We have accomplished so much in the area of diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, but we knew that we had to do better. And we also knew that the FIU Foundation and the work that we're doing in this space related to inclusive philanthropy could really help to address some of the targeted equity outcomes that we have identified through some of our asset mapping. And so we're excited about what we've accomplished thus far. This work is challenging, sometimes extremely tiring and emotional, but it is so worth it. And I think that our office has really set the standard for how this work can be accomplished.
In thinking about DEI issues, I would say too often it becomes a numbers game, or it is interpreted as a numbers game. How many in this category? How many in that category? What I gather from as you're talking, you look beyond that when you're thinking about how issues of diversity, equity, inclusion have a place in an organization like FIU and other kinds of organizations. Talk a little bit about that.
Sure. So I think, inclusive philanthropy isn't just, this phenomenon that just, makes the work that we're doing sound good, right? It really is about inclusion in this work and making sure that we have the voices and the stakeholders and the community at the table in this space. And I think oftentimes institutions, we disregard those voices, right? And it's not always intentional, but it's just how sometimes institutions, we've always done it that way. And the community is an important partner in the work that we're doing here at FIU. And the intentionality has become a priority in this work. When we take a look at our strategic plan, the data is always important, right? The metrics are always important. And I think one of the reasons why the Office of Inclusive Philanthropy has been successful in the work that we're doing is because we do support the metrics, right? We know that recruitment and retention and graduation, that's important. That's priority, right? We also know that increasing diverse faculty, and what does that look like, right? Diversity in research, what does that look like? And so when you have the data to support the work, that's where really the intentionality comes in, and it's also supported as well.
Can you give me an example of where this intentionality has come together and the data shows the impact that your work has taken?
Absolutely. So I think one of the things that we really focused on is making sure that inclusive philanthropy is really the thread of our conversation, right? It is a metric when it comes to our development officers submitting grants, right? It's a priority. When we meet with our deans, the work that we're doing in support of DEI across the university in collaboration with our Division of Diversity at the institutional level is a part of every conversation. It's never an afterthought, right? It's really become a thread of what we're doing. And so we want to support. A good example is, our researchers' work, let's say, like with Alzheimer's as an example, and the impact that it has on minority populations. Working with those deans and saying, listen, we can help you support this work to elevate it, to, identify funding to support the work that you're doing, right? And so when it's a part of the conversation, it's really a part of the work that we're doing. It just becomes ingrained, and it's never a second thought. And that's really been a priority for us.
Yeah, I've heard you talk about the Alzheimer's example because I guess so too often in medical research, populations, the broadest population is often not included, and therefore the results may well be challenged because not everyone and their circumstances may have been taken into account in the
Correct.
research process.
Right. And I can say that diversity in our research remains a priority for our faculty, for our different colleges. But I also think too that when we're talking about philanthropy, it always helps to bring a different perspective in
Mm-hmm.
how philanthropy can really help support that work and helping, you know, it's because it's really about collaboration. We can't work in silos when it comes to this important work. And
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of times, when you're having conversations with our faculty members, with the development officers, with even our students, right? Helping all of us to think outside the box about the work that we're doing,
Mm-hmm.
and really making sure that we are being inclusive.
Too often, um, development officers would say, "I don't really know how to think about this work." What kind of training or education was necessary to get development officers at a place where they felt comfortable and knowledgeable that they could look outside the box, as you say, when thinking about their prospects, the
Mhm.
opportunities at the university, etc.
So I think metrics has played an important part because there's a level of accountability there,
Mm,
right? And so DEI is part of our metrics, number one. Number two, because we are a very diverse population in a diverse institution, DEI has always been a priority, but I think that we have taken it to another level, right? And how we're approaching this work through philanthropy, because we are looking at targeted equity outcomes. We've also identified, initiative gaps, right, at both the college and the unit levels. So I think that when you are able to take a look at what your goals are, what you want to accomplish, what your metrics are, then it's doable,
mhm,
right? We can say, okay, we want to increase the number of Black males that are enrolled.
mhm,
We want to increase the number of women and girls in STEM, in
mhm,
cybersecurity,
mhm,
right? So we have a focus and we know. And so we attach metrics to those things, we attach specific goals, and then we begin to look at, okay, we have alumni that we have not engaged with, that we should be having conversations with. We are leaving money on the table in these areas, right? Have we taken a look at how our Black dollars have supported our Black students? And so I think having those important conversations, looking at the data, identifying those targeted equity outcomes has really been um, key and priority in the work that we're doing. And so we've included development officers in that process. We're taking a look at, how we can better engage with our alumni as we're rolling out our case statement. We're taking a look at also how we are tracking individuals in our database. We're also discussing affinity, um, allyship, all of those things. And so
mhm.
we're looking at things a lot broader. We do have some work to do. We've established our Women in Philanthropy Council, which I'm so excited about, because we do know that women are major givers and they are leading philanthropy. But unfortunately, we don't have the data to support their giving. And
Mhm.
so we've also taken a look at that. We've established, the Women in Philanthropy Council, and I look forward to coming back and sharing more about how we're moving that philanthropy forward as well.
So it sounds like you are in this process getting to know your prospective donors better, and I would dare say throwing away some of the stereotypes about who is or is not giving, or who is or is not philanthropic.
Correct. And providing those trainings to our development officers has been very key, right? Um, developing solutions without a race-based lens, it can be detrimental. Making sure that we're having those very bold but tough conversations, making sure that our community and our stakeholders and our alumni are part of the conversations and the training. FIU, again, very diverse. So one of the examples that I wanted to give is that FIU, we acknowledge that our institution is located on the ancestral homelands of sovereign Native nations, including the Tequesta, the Calusa, and the Seminole Tribe of Florida, and the Miccosukee tribes of Indians of Florida. And so, how are we acknowledging, even in that space, the work that we're doing and our Indigenous students, and acknowledging too that Indigenous looks very different and the definitions of that are very broad. And how are we educating our development officers in that space when it comes to what philanthropy looks like,
Sure.
right? For specific populations. I've even heard people say, from other institutions, well, do Black people really give? Right? Yes, we do. And we've given for centuries, right?
That's right.
And it may look a little bit different. We've even realized that in the Hispanic Latino population, it's the same as well. There's do Hispanic and Latino populations? Yes, they do. They do give. So it's a learning process.
And those communities often give out of proportion to their relative wealth.
Yes.
And that's something that institutions, it's important for them to be aware of.
It's important for them to be aware of. Yeah. And I think also too, just making sure that the education that we're providing to our development officers is not just the feel-good type of education. Like we want to get down, I don't want to say down and dirty, but I don't know how else to really say it, but we want to really be transparent and forthright in the work that we're doing so that we walk away from this and we're involved in this with a lot of transparency and understanding in the work that we're doing so that we can be very sensitive in our approach. We're even learning African American and Black, right? What does that mean for different populations? Does it something different for the Caribbean population? The Haitian population, right? What does that mean? So there's a different, all sorts of nuances in education.
Yeah, all of these communities themselves are diverse.
Correct.
And one needs to be understanding of the nuances of that diversity within each of these communities.
Correct.
What kind of buy-in did you need to have in order to make this successful?
So the division of DEI at the university level was extremely supportive of the work that we were doing. We made sure that our former president knew exactly the steps that we were taking to establish the office, understood how the work that we were doing would support the metrics and the strategic plan of the university. And then obviously, last but not least, is the buy-in of the CEO of the foundation being very supportive, and saying, okay, we have funding to help support some of the work that you're doing. What does your 3-year plan look like, right? And then also making sure that when we talk about DEI and we talk about inclusion, that we were being inclusive in our work itself, right? Making sure that we weren't siloed in the work, that there is truly cross collaboration, because that's really where we've been very successful with the buy-in and the work that we're doing.
In any road to systemic change, there are going to be potholes. What would you see as some of the barriers that you had to face and overcome on this road to success?
So I think that there are some people that don't understand, why is DEI a priority? Why does this office exist? And so one of the things that I have learned and our team is learning is that we have to really meet people where they are and help to explain the importance of the work that we're doing. And I think it goes back to as well is thinking outside the box in our approach and having these conversations and tying
Mhm.
it into the work that they're doing, and how we can support the elevation of the work, right? And how it can affect the community and the work that they're doing and our students. And so, even if people don't quite understand, we keep it moving and we hope that they see the light and get on board. But even if they don't, right? The work is here, it's important, and we're gonna continue.
The train is leaving the station.
The train is leaving the station. Correct.
So when you think about 3 years from now, how are you going to measure your success?
So that is why the metrics and the data are so important, right? And the target equity outcome. So we can say, okay, this is where we started. This is where we want to end. This is what the growth is going to look like over those 3 years. This is how, we've helped to increase the number of Black students, Black males on campus, right? This is what it looked like. This is the funding that we received. This is how we collaborated, and this is the end result. So I think the metrics and the data is really going to tell the story.
Mhm. So what's the next frontier? Where do you want to go next? You've got your 3-year plan. You've got some things you want to do. What's beyond the horizon for you?
So I think what is beyond the horizon, and we're actually working on this right now,
Mhm.
is there are so many institutions who are doing this great work, but they may need some assistance in the collaboration between the institution and the foundation. What does
Mhm.
that look like? And so we're offering the opportunity for institutions to take a look at FOIP as a model in this space, right? And so we're offering webinars. We've gotten an amazing response. I'm so excited about that. We're
Imagine.
broken down into 6 modules um, about asset mapping, transformation maps, targeted equity outcomes, developing a case statement that you can use as a guide and a roadmap, for your prospects and for your donors who are
Mhm.
interested in investing in social justice and equity initiatives. So I see that really taking off and really helping institutions and collaborating with institutions, right? But not only that, redressing historic inequities, right? And helping to advance the work here on campus so that we really reflect our community and the work that we're doing and addressing those target equity outcomes and those gaps. So we have a lot of work to do, but on the horizon, I really feel like the work that we're doing can be integrated, nationally
Sure.
across.
I mean, that is exciting to think that you can be a role model for other institutions, because I think we as consultants, when we're working with a variety of institutions, they're all asking these kinds of questions of themselves and are trying to find a way,
Mhm.
um, and can look to you as a leader in helping them build a path towards a more inclusive philanthropic culture.
Well, we anticipate by the end of this fiscal year, since the founding of the office in 2021, I mean, we anticipate $55 million raised in support of DEI initiatives university-wide,
That's an
right?
important metric.
That's an important metric. That says a lot about the work that we're doing, how successful we have been, and the importance of collaboration. across the university. So we want to provide those tools so that institutions can do the same.
Yes. Maia, what didn't I ask that you might have expected me to ask today?
Richard, you're always very prepared. So I think you did a great job. And again, I really appreciated this opportunity. I think one of the things that I would like to just maybe end with is one of our many goals is to really empower philanthropists as drivers of change and embedding them as partners in advancing transformative solutions. And I think that if institutions and advancement shops keep that at the forefront of thought in doing this work, they really will see positive change taking place.
Thank you. Maia, this has been a real treat for me. Thank you for being here with us today and sharing your work and what you've been able to accomplish at FIU. And I want to thank also our listeners. We hope you've gained a lot from this episode, and we look forward to coming to you with more in the near future. Thanks
you so
again,
much.
Maia.
I appreciate you and Marts&Lundy. Thank you.
We thank you for listening and invite you to visit our What We Think page at martsandlundy.com. Here you will find blogs, webinars, and special reports with more of our insights.